and you realize it's the people, and the role actually doesn't really matter. That it matters for like your next job, when you have to put it on your CV. But for the current job, it's completely elastic, and to actually just be someone who gets things done and who does what they're good at, and transferring those skills, you can do anything. I really am a believer of like, you can, in the current kind of corporate and capitalism environment, it encourages people to fake it and to reach as high as they can, and then you kind of fall a few steps lower, and then you get better.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. It's been quite a while since we've been here. Alfie and I have taken the pace a little bit slower this year compared to last year, but it's been actually so nice. We've been figuring out what else we want to do with the podcast, and recently we also had our first live event, which was it was so great. And at the event, we had a couple of our previous guests as speakers at the live event. And we also actually had two guests who we didn't know very well before. So we decided, it's probably a good idea that we do a separate podcast episode with one of those guests, because we just found his journey so fascinating, and it was so lucky to have him there at the live event. So we've invited Joshua Weiss back on the couch with us, just this time virtually in our podcast studio. Hey, Josh, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to actually sit down and chat. That was my first live event, the one I did with you. And it was very chatting in front of people. It's far more relaxed. At home, on the call.
Yeah. Maybe we can actually just start there, because I would love to hear what your experience was like. Because, for me, I was saying to Alfie, you can sense that live events isn't as common anymore. And it's almost like we all had to adjust to talking to people in person again, compared to this. Like, the confidence behind the screen is just, for me, so much higher.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the live event. It was really cool. I like the format, how you did it as well, kind of like rotating people on and off. And that, the fact that we were speaking to students also immediately is a lot less intimidating, because I know what I was like as a student. so that was great. Industry professionals, there's things on the line, your reputation on the line, that you need to be careful what you say, because someone might know like a really specific piece of information and call you out on it. So much better. What I found was really interesting, and it's something that I also learned going from student to working, is not understanding how businesses work. And they kept asking us all these social dynamic questions about the relationships and everything. And I thought that was a really cool piece that came out of it, how we could talk them through how a business is a collection of people and how it changes and it's dynamic. And that was really interesting, that it wasn't so much a business conversation, but more of a social conversation.
Yeah, definitely points to the generation, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't know, to be honest, because I'm like a few years ahead.
Yeah,
but
so, I think a thing I can add on to that, Steph, that I found is interesting is just, there was a bit of a conversation I had with one of the staff, and you could hear that so she was talking a little bit about how her analysis of some of the questions the students were asking.
Yeah.
And she was saying, especially for some of the students that have their college experience was during COVID, there's an element of things that you didn't necessarily get access to as much if you're sort of studying during that time. And maybe it's a little bit to do with the generation, but maybe it's more to do with the specific context of the time. Like, the questions that people have are like, when you're working remotely, like, how do you meet people? It's a strange thing, but it's like, for some people, it's a genuine question that they sort of have to deal with now.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen, they've defined this new group called Zillennials, which is...
No?
I mean, this is all, it's not like a fixed thing, but it's one guy.
Yeah.
I think it's 1992 to 2002. And I fall like smack in, I'm 1997. And it's the group of people who grew up in COVID during their forming years through matric and university. So it's like a very subsection of Zoomers. And then a lot of the comments were saying like, it should be smaller, like 1995 to 2000, which I agree with a little bit more. I think that academic is quite a wide band. But yeah, it was interesting. I relate a lot. We fall between the millennials because I feel like a lot of my behavior is very Zoomer behavior on the internet. But it like kind of, I don't know where I was going. Any interesting tidbit that exists because of this COVID gap.
But I think you're right. It is interesting because it's sort of like, there's specific events in history that almost demarcate where you should draw a line between one generation and the next. And I guess the argument is that it might be that COVID is one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely will be.
On these naming of generations, it's really funny if you look at the papers that get released on the social dynamics. Every 20 years, there's a huge spike because all these academics are trying to be the one who names the next generation. So they'll literally time their work over like a 10-year, 20-year period so that it can kind of culminate as the next generation is moving into the next phase.
Interesting.
And to be the famous one to name.
Sure. Look, Josh, we've gotten to know you now, obviously, because of the Sofa Stories event. But the people listening, if they didn't watch the recording of the event, they actually have no idea who you are. So I thought it would be actually really nice to completely do your backstory again, and you can take as much freedom there as you want to tell us in how much detail you want, if there's other stories or fewer stories you want to share with us. But I think it will be particularly interesting to share with what you're doing now in a profession and where you came from, what you studied, and go for it.
Okay, cool. I'll give a shorter version. I think that's the whole podcast. Talking about background. But I grew up in Midrand, Joburg, moved to Cape Town when I was very young. Went to a nice privileged high school, Rondebosch Boys High. My mom taught at UCT, so it was UCT or bust. And I went to go study there. Throughout high school, I wasn't a great academic. I kind of got through. I was doing a lot of other stuff, so I got a lot into technology and computers, hosting LANs. You can see all the crap behind. So I was doing a lot of computers and technology, which my dad got me into very early. And then that transitioned into gaming, and I played a lot of games all the time. Then in university, I started playing even more games, and my grades got even worse. I was studying a BCom information systems, the combination of business and coding, because I'm not a huge academic. I can't be a coder sitting all day. But I also didn't really want to do the engineering side. So it was a nice compromise, and I could get in, which was great. So
always a bonus.
By the skin of my teeth. I got in and immediately started failing things like economics and accounting because I was playing a lot of games, and I started competing in games and forming a team and playing in Counter-Strike at the time. And I was pretty good, kind of tier 2. And then that was 2015, I started studying. Then in 2017, a game called PUBG came out, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. People probably know for the mobile version now. It's died a little bit, a lot since then. But it was like this huge hit. And I just jumped on with my friends, our team, straight from day one, and we actually started getting pretty good at it. And I was also doing waitering at the time. And I started competing in PUBG and joining tournaments and winning enough to the fact that I could quit my waitering job, which was great.
That's crazy.
So I was trying to get through university, enjoying my major, which is the information systems side. So mapping businesses, mapping systems, looking at how to solve problems in business through technology. I really enjoyed that part. Everything else around it, terrible. Academic experience, terrible. But I really liked that. And I was gaming a lot, started competing, getting more serious. And then at the end of second year, things kind of came to a crux where I needed to split my courses into 2 years. So I needed to extend my degree for a various amount of reasons. But one of those reasons was I wanted to take the gaming a lot more seriously. And I actually made a pitch to my parents. in the saying I needed to structure the gaming. Okay, maybe a little bit of backstory as well. I've always wanted to work in the gaming industry. I think it's an amazing industry. I think it's my film 2.0. You know, a lot of people, they want to get into film and production and all the things that make that beautiful. Yeah. For me, gaming is just my generation's version of that, is almost how I see it. You know, you build products that people really love and care about, and the world is changing super quickly and it's huge, you know, and there's all different types of products you can do and turning everyone into a gamer, all that sort of stuff. And I had made a lot of friends and connections and value through gaming. So I loved it. So I wanted to work in gaming. In South Africa, there's basically zero opportunities. I think there's something, I might mess up this number, but the average size of a gaming company in South Africa is 2 people. I think it might have grown.
That's crazy, yeah. That doesn't surprise me either, though.
Yeah, and you know, one of those is a coder, and I'm not a developer. So the mere fact that I couldn't get in from the software approach or didn't want to, immediately limited. And I'm not a creative, right? I can't really draw that well or anything. So I couldn't do the art side, I couldn't do the coding side.
You said you did a pitch to your parents. I'm very curious how you approached that. And is it because the little bit of business, or not a little bit, the business side of your degree that you love, do you feel like that kind of inspired you or helped you to try and motivate this decision in your life? How did you go about that? Pitching to your parents?
It opened an avenue because, to kind of get to it, you know, I knew I couldn't be coding. I knew I couldn't be art, creative side. So the only side left was like the manager, like operations, you know, like, and that's where a lot of information systems came in because it's analyst work. So I thought, all right, I can probably find that third tier around the business management of games. Not that I didn't know anything what that looked like in university still. So a big part of that side, I mean, as you guys know from product, is users, you know, and understanding the problems of the industry. And that was essentially my pitch to my parents, is like, look, I am going to extend my degree, my final third year. I'm going to split into 2. I'm going to do my majors first because I like that because it's easier. And I'm going to do all my electives dumped at the end of in the 4th year. And with that extra time, I'm going to go full into gaming competitive, not for the purpose of becoming a pro player and making bucks and, you know, moving into a content creator house, but to understand how the industry worked. What were the pain points for professional gamers? How did, you know, gaming organizations, what was the behind the scenes? What did it look like? And with the ultimate goal of getting stuff on my CV. So the idea was I could go to a gaming company and say, look, I've never built a game, but I can tell you exactly how the industry works. I can solve problems for gamers with the business side because I understand what's happening.
That's a very convincing pitch.
Yeah, I was about to say, Jesus, all that sounds really intentional, but also very, very, like almost backed with data, like very convincing.
Yeah, sure. You know, at the time though, I didn't actually see it like that because I was just a student. I just knew there were so many problems in the gaming industry that I felt I had the solutions to solve because I had experienced them. PUBG, just a little background, was a single guy who had a vision, and he joined with a Korean studio, and they made this game that just exploded, and it became the biggest game by far in the world for like a year, you know, and they were so woefully unequipped, their business unit, for what they had stumbled into, and there were so many business management issues in PUBG, which resulted in gameplay issues and all these things that players see, but, you know, doing information systems, I can kind of peek a little bit behind, and like small things. And I was just like, you know, it's filled with inefficiencies here. And I feel like I could help this side. I could see it. So I didn't, you know, I speak about, you know, talk about the user's perspective, but the user was me. And I felt I could add value. So that's how I approached it. It's also very developing, right? It feels like a little bit of a gold rush. Gaming still is a gold rush, I think, to a lot of, to a point. So yeah, so I kind of did. Look, there was no pitch deck, there was no nothing, but it was an agreement. It was saying, I'm going to give the gaming thing a shot. I'm going to extend. You need to pay for an extra year. I'm going to live at home. I ended up living at home for a lot longer. Turns out, joining a startup, you don't make any money. So I was privileged in that fact, you know, and I could a major part of it as well was my mom studied there, so I only paid 15% fees. And that was a huge contributing factor to it. So, not everyone can do it. And it's why I think a lot of gaming in South Africa is very privileged, because it's not monetizable. So you need that support network. But I had it, and I took advantage straight up. So that was the agreement. I was going to extend into 2 years. They would pay for another year staying at home, pay for another year at uni, and I would focus in on games. So we hit it hard. I would go to uni 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. I would do my majors in the morning. And then from about 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. at night, we would just be playing games. So I'd get home, warm up, team warm up, play publics, then go into
warm up.
Scrims. Yeah, literally full warm up. Exercise. I had my whole routine, set my PC out the exact same way every day. And we would scrim against private teams. I had a really great teammate who I later went into business with. And we were always like really tight together. And we formed these teams. We got sponsorship for equipment. And after about a year and a half, we had done really well. So we were the top team in South Africa for PUBG. I will claim that. We won every monthly tournament. That was like my paycheck every month, because you didn't get paid. We got equipment sponsored, but you had to win tournaments to get money in. So yeah, we played, and kind of the top level that we got is I qualified for essentially what is the FIFA qualifiers, the European FIFA qualifiers. So it's not quite FIFA, it's crazy. Like under. And we had beaten out 1,000 other qualifying teams in the open qualifiers. Yeah. And it was us and a Turkish team. So the North African region and Middle Eastern. So we played together, MEA, Middle East and Africa. And then that grows into EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa. So we're all kind of in this band. And Middle East, they've got a lot of money that they put towards esports. A lot of their official sports also support esports teams. So it's far more established. And they're also much closer to Europe. So they're a big region compared to the rest of Africa. But so it's always dominated by Turkish teams, for example. And we had squeezed out a second place, which is the top 2. So top 2 out of 1,000 teams qualify. Wow. And we did it, and we made it into these qualifiers, and we got completely slapped. Like pushed around, destroyed. It was awful. I think we came last out of 16 teams that played. And it was kind of at that point that I took a step back. I said, all right. And the South African gaming bubble is something I won't talk about now, but it exists, how isolated we are as a region and the experience we can get. So I hit the bubble, definitely. We hit the bubble. And I kind of took a step back. I said, well, look, I've played at international level. I've created, in the background, we were also building up the South African scene. So I was going to European organizers and saying, hey, we have players here, put on tournaments for us, and building those relationships, starting to get a little bit behind the scenes. I'd made friends with several pros. We had our own performance coach. It was a Swedish guy, Sauki was his name. And we had the whole ecosystem. And I felt like I understood what we needed to do, what gaming needed, how it was built, what were the problems, and then literally stepped away. I was like, cool. I feel like I learned it. It took a year and a half. We got to the level that I was happy with, and I am happy with the level I got. I feel like we solidly represented South Africa. And then stepped away, and it was kind of like, okay, well, what's next? So then my partner who I spoke about previously, him and we had noticed a big gap in the market for putting on tournaments and live stream productions on Twitch, because for battle royales specifically, because there's a lot of nuance to battle royale that you understand as a pro player or semi-pro. South Africans, we don't call ourselves pros because we don't make livable salaries. So it's always a semi-pro / competitive. So we understood there was a lot of nuance in battle royales that the world was still figuring out. And Fortnite was huge. PUBG Mobile was huge. PUBG was huge. So we created a production company that was white labeled called Gravity South, which is just him and I. He was a caster. So he would do the play-by-play casting. I would do the analysis. And we would go to tournament organizers who had the sponsors. And we would say, look, there's a lot of hassle that goes into doing these productions. Instead of, hiring your own stuff, doing it internally, just pay us 10 grand a month and we'll put on a 4-hour tournament every Sunday for the whole month. And we'll do the casting, we'll do the seeding of players into the lobbies. Was a huge nightmare because these tools are not set up properly. And the game So we did that, and we did the whole admin side. And they really liked that, you know, and we it was very startup, you know, bootstrapped, like you do whatever you can. It was completely scuffed. One time the video wouldn't render in time for the production. So I started up a private YouTube stream that my co-founder then watched, and I played the video from Premiere and then streamed it on YouTube, and then he forwarded that into the Twitch stream because it wouldn't render. So it was like really scuffed stuff like that, you know, and we were not the biggest professionals. Like there were problems, and you're on a 10-minute delay as well. So you're talking, 10 minutes later, someone in chat says you're muted, and then you change it, and 10 minutes after that, it actually reflects. So after the first person catches it, you've got 10 minutes of people saying, it's broken, trash, you know, and you're in a live environment. So it was very much a trial by fire into the business world. But it was cool, and it was the next step. Okay, I said I wasn't going to take forever, and now I'm just talking forever. I'm gonna speed up. So did this production thing. It was going pretty well. It was taking a lot out of us. Still trying to study. Still at this point, I was doing my last semester of university, and that's when the Gravity South thing was kicking up and ramping up. And we were really struggling to grow it as well, and getting a little bit burnt out, to be honest. My friend had also moved up to the Netherlands, and he was doing all sorts of cool stuff as well. So, we were kind of looking for an out in a way. And then one of the tournaments we had put on was at ATK, which is a gaming arena in Cape Town. And they had a startup, or a pre-kind of stage startup, come to them with a POC that they needed to demo in front of their first angel investor. And it was for gaming. So it was a gaming startup, and they were essentially tracking in-game performance, and it was wagering. That's what it was. It was real money wagering between two players, and it would track the in-game performance. But they weren't particularly good at the game, and the game was PUBG. So they asked ATK, it's like, hey, do you know anyone who's good at PUBG? And they said, well, we've got this guy putting on a PUBG tournament. He can probably play. So they hit me up. I knew no context. I knew nothing. I said yes immediately. You know, it's like, oh, someone wants me. There's an opportunity. Yes. And it was like a huge defining factor. I think a lot of my career is just jumping on shit, no matter what it is, and doing things for free. And, you know, I hosted one of these little stages in Cape Town gaming, knowing nothing, basically just punting gaming to like government officials because someone on Twitter asked that if they needed.
Because someone on Twitter asked,
Yeah, it was literally someone on Twitter asked, and you know they were putting
more people like you for gaming.
For the government, and I rocked up and I pitched gaming, and you know, like stuff like that, like useless stuff, and none of it ever showed any return, you could say, right? But then this opportunity came along. I got to the venue on the day. They talked me through the software. I was like, cool, I get it. I understand how the system works. Degree, you know, in my pocket, or finishing my degree at that point. And I did the demo for them. And big part for them was talking about how it's skill-based. So big difference between gambling and like in-game wagering, you know, debate aside, gray zone aside, whatever, is that gaming is inherently skill-based. So I kind of took that and rolled with it in how I mitigated risk in the game as a pro player, because that's what pro play is all about. It's about consistency. And that's what you try to build. So I try to talk about that consistency. I ended up winning the PUBG match, you know, in the game, and talked through it. It was a great showing. And afterwards, one of the founders, he actually sat me down. He said, okay, well, what's your story? And that was really cool, because that was the first time that a businessman or an adult had actually shown interest in you, not that you're just a student, you know, or a kid. And it was a very weird feeling that came over me of like, wow, someone's listening to me and the value that I add. So he was really interested. You know, I spoke about my degree. I spoke about gaming. He said, all right, hit me up when you're done studying. And like, we're keen to have you on as an intern. And I was like, awesome, great. So I finished my degree. I hit him up, got blue ticked, no response. About 3 days later or a week later, I hit him up again. I said, hey, I know you're keen. You know, you I think I put on a good showing. I know that you were interested to have me. Like, let's do this. Like, I'm keen to join. And it was a second message, which was he was also a little bit of like a, in a respectful way, a little bit of like a boykie, right? He's got a beard, he's got tattoos, he's like a cool dude. Marketing. So I knew the strategy to kind of take, and I was like, look, I'm keen to do this. So we met at Burger and Lobster.
So you sent him a second message. That's very brave, hey? I just want to point that out. I think that takes a lot of courage and humility, especially as someone trying to break into an industry. And you're getting the opportunity, and sometimes I think a lot of people, if they didn't get a response, they would immediately either second guess themselves or think this person has changed their mind and kind of just give up and like mourn that within them. So yeah, I must say that's well done.
And that's actually why I put it out, because it's something I say a lot to people. Is it's I have quite a lot of anxiety as well. So like I'm not this fucking super confident person.
Yeah.
I think what I look at is the consequences, right? And how we build the consequences in our own head when they don't actually exist.
True.
And taking that step of, jumping into the production, like we did a horrible job the first couple of times. I feel so guilty still to this day of taking people's money for some of the productions we put on. But my partner and I had this phrase, fake it till you make it. Like we're just going to do it until we make it. And, what are the consequences? You're failing upwards a lot of the time, by making. And if he hadn't responded the second time, so what? I don't lose anything.
You don't lose more whether you message him once or twice. Yes.
Yeah. So I keep trying to tell people, like, just take the jump off the springboard, because there is no, people will judge you more for giving up than they will for, trying your best.
Trying too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Try hard. I would definitely define myself as a try hard. That's what I do. But yeah, so I messaged him. We met at Burger and Lobster. We got drunk. We found it. Yeah, they got me too. I didn't know.
That was just so casual. I did not
classic interview.
Yeah, but that was a startup environment I was walking into. Which I was woefully unprepared for what startups looked like. At UCT, all they told us was about big companies, like Capitec, Investec. You're going to go work as a business analyst with a suit. And they never mentioned the startup. No one at any point mentioned starting your own thing. So, so the thing that actually got me across the line was the kind of ideas and projects I had done, not the degree or anything else around that. So CV stuff is about like experience and going out and doing things. The fact that I had a little computer business where I was selling networking stuff. Because one of the things that got me out was like, okay, well, you can set up the network for the office. It's like, sure. I never set up a network for an office before. I had no idea what I was doing, but I like bluffed my way through it when I got there, when I already had the job. But it's like, yeah, sure. I'll perform magic, like whatever you need. So I joined as a gaming intern. This was beginning of 2020. So in COVID, as COVID struck, this company launched. So they're called Skirmish, still operating today. I give them all my love. They're doing great.
I saw they just also got nominated for, or actually did they win yesterday, the best startup from Startup Club of the year.
FinTech.
I think they were nominated. I don't know if the winner has been announced yet.
Yeah, they're still in the voting. And that's from the kind of e-wallet, crypto, digital wallet side. That is the one part of the platform. But when we started, we pivoted several times. And when it started, it was just peer-to-peer wagering. And it was myself, the CTO, the two founders, and one dev, right? And we fucked around in the dark for like a full year. It was a wild time. Just as COVID hit, we realized we needed an office. So we got a little office in COVID, got our little essential worker badges, and kind of bluffed our way and learned how to create a platform. So I started as a gaming intern, knowing the gaming industry was kind of my thing. So and I also did a lot of community growth right at the beginning stages because I knew how to build community and form a Discord and put on tournaments. And then through my degree, what I was enabled by my degree was the fact that I could look at systems and data. So I got into product through the data side. Is we would have these flows of like, how do you get into the app? And I would see the data and I'd say, okay, well, what makes sense in terms of capturing information from users as they move through an app? To get technical now, to jump into technical, but as people move through an app, you start with a big funnel and it kind of, every layer people drop off until you get your last little bit who are paying. And I could see how the data flowed between that and how the experience was. And I started kind of giving my 2 cents, you could say. So I would draw these terrible wireframes in draw.io that looked awful, but they started showing these flows and the devs would kind of look at it and the founder would go like, you know what? I get why you're doing it. It starts to make sense. And that was the beginning of my product journey. And I kind of transitioned about after 6 months into a product manager, which I didn't even know existed when I started. And they didn't even know either. The founders didn't even know either. So yeah,
that's crazy, and I think there's something there that I kind of want to point out a little bit, just because I somewhat also maybe peeked over the wall into the professional gaming space, and I think after a very short time, actually really seriously thinking about getting in, I sort of realized how much growth is still needed in the gaming industry, and I think there are a lot of people who find themselves at a similar sort of thing. They reach the wall of the bubble, and then they need a sort of pivot. And I want to point out specifically how you were sort of thinking about using the analytical knowledge that you studied, but also that you got from being on the ground to sort of building a new career path. Because it sounds to me very much like you were sort of guided by intuition in some sense, taking the things that you were that you knew about the industry and that you knew about data capturing and almost making a job for yourself.
Yeah. Gaming product manager is what we used to joke. Yeah, I think something I realized, and I think a lot of people who kind of get that, is knowledge is power in gaming. And gaming is this huge industry that hides behind a thin little wall. And if you play games and you understand technology and how people interact online, many people in the business world don't understand that. They don't understand how communities are formed on TikTok and where users come from on the internet. That basic question, pretty much most gamers can answer. If they're a bit like on the business side, it's like, oh, I understand what makes a game popular. That's valuable. That's users and onboarding. So you need that second thing. The gaming only piece is a nice fantasy for South Africans. Very difficult. There are a few who have done it, and they are my heroes to be able to do it. But you need that second piece of, and it can be anything. It can be law. It can be engineering and going into development. It can be creative, so any side of creative, animation, drawing. And it's really giving you an edge in the interviews is what you're looking for. Is I am a graphics designer who understands gaming and marketing and how to draw gaming art and all of that. And it's that combination that actually gets you the jobs in a lot of times. And companies want to have people who are in gaming. They're intimidated by gaming and they want a piece of it, but they don't know how to do it. And every consultant that they hired for 100,000 Rand a month, that was a terrible experience for them, and they didn't get anywhere. So they're looking for young talent that can execute on the execution level. And that's what our generation does very well, I think, is we're very lateral in how we execute. And we can think about things like marketing and tech and social and all of it combined. I think it makes us very strong being an internet kind of culture, you could say. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say is it's a two-parter. It's your degree / skills mixed in with the gaming, and then learning how to sell that and not coming across as a sweaty gamer, who just wants to sit down and play games every day.
Yeah. Fitting unfortunately, like the stereotype all these older generational business people might have in their mind, like, I don't want to employ a gamer because TV tells me that this is what a gamer looks like. They're lazy.
So when I was competing, I had long hair, I had an untrimmed beard, I was fatter. And then when I went into work, I was like, no, I'm not going to be this gamer stereotype. So got a short haircut, and I had to change physical, started working out again to fit into that business world, which is, I'm happy to bend to, but it's just a personal thing, right? Like, you can become who you just say, fuck it. Like, sorry, I don't know. Can we swear? Are you going to sleep out?
Yeah.
Should have checked that. Too late. Yeah. So And I wanted to break that stereotype, not because of pressure from other people. No one ever commented on it, but because I wanted to present as business and not gamer.
Yeah. Did you make that decision when you started working for Skirmish, or was that even when you guys started the production company?
So it was really, to be honest, my girlfriend who started getting into fitness. And then I followed her. So she set the example for me. But it was on Skirmish. It was more the Skirmish side. Although I did, no, you're right. I did cut my hair when I started having to be on camera. Because I had terrible, like it was unkept. It was like completely gamer,
I think, there's just something also to be said, I'm just listening to you talk about how you sort of start to present yourself differently when you enter the business environment. And I think sometimes it's easy for people to think when a person is changing how they look, they're simply trying to convince you that they're somebody else. But I think there's also an element of like when you see yourself differently, you think about yourself differently.
Yes, you take yourself seriously.
Exactly. Like a silly example, like every time when I trim my beard, for example, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to look like the freshest version of myself for that specific engagement. And I think, one of the critiques maybe that I can hold to the gaming community, because this is the community that I come from, is we sometimes want to convince ourselves that, no, it's just my skills or it's just how great I am that's going to define how people, see you. But I think the element we sometimes forget is how you see yourself also affects how you're going to act and present and sort of engage with the people around you. So I definitely see why you kind of took that approach or that thinking.
Yeah, and it's also, it's like you said, your freshest self, and I think it's a decision a lot of people kind of need to take and deal with. Something I've dealt with a lot is the world's a terrible place in a lot of ways, and how much do you feed the machine, being in product and being in the business world and being in marketing? And it's kind of a conversation every person needs to have. Am I going to go the more anarchist route of I'm going to be my true self and provide value and people can adjust around me? Or am I going to, feed the machine and go on to the more business? And, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. But the way I see it is just kind of, I don't know. To be honest, I've just cut my hair at the end of the day. But so should I finish off quickly and then we can actually just talk?
Cool.
Continue this. Joined Skirmish, pivoted many times, learned tons of lessons about startups. Startup was the most amazing thing I could do. Getting to be in the same room as these founders, talking to investors, seeing how they hired people, how they built teams, how they were also lost, the mental struggles they also went through, and the pressure that founders have on themselves, where it's not just, your life that you got, it's all your team members, and you're pulling people into your company and asking them to commit a lot of time for very little money with the promise, that it might all just fall down, and having to sell out in a lot of ways and compromise on your own vision to protect those around you. I think it's a story that often gets lost, that we don't tell. In the success stories, we talk about a lot of success stories, but how much those founders sacrifice, I think, it's something that I never knew about, and I'm sure you two can relate as well to a point, from your vision to kind of reality. And
a lot of things die along the way.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a huge privilege, and just seeing the investor side as well was really great. Learning how to pitch and getting into product as well was really cool, because it was an area I didn't know existed. And then once I knew about it, I immediately realized this is where I sit in product, designing things, talking to users, and solving problems, right? And working with dev. I'm more of a technical product side, and less on the business and the marketing. I was there for 3 years till the end of last year, and kind of saw the team through everything, and then decided to, I'm kind of ready for the next step. Nothing against the company or where it was, but we kind of looked at it, and the company was in the startup grind. And, your profession and your career, you kind of wanted to look up, right? You kind of want to keep going up. Yeah. Whereas a life of a startup is ups and downs, and those ups and downs, I felt like I was giving a lot to the startup at the cost. And the cost of my career was starting to gain, where I was doing the same things, right? Because we're not going and building a million different products and expanding in. We're building the same product and improving it and getting a little bit better. And I felt like I had learned a lot of the lessons I was going to learn, and it was time to jump ship. So I found this company called Specno, or it found me. I went to an event, a gaming event, one of their networking events. Our founder, he actually introduced the same guy who had spoken to me at ATK, who had onboarded me onto Skirmish. He told me about this gaming. It was like Business of Games that Specno was putting on. And he invited everyone in the company and only myself. And I was also working with my girlfriend, still my girlfriend. We were working at Skirmish together. And we were the only ones who ended up going, of the whole team. And I mean, immediately I did fall in love with the company, to be honest. And ended up, went through the interview process. And in my interview, what did I speak about? I spoke about my startup journey at Skirmish and everything I'd learned, and how we were data-driven, how we looked at users, how we scrambled around in the dark, being brutally honest. And that got me in. So, and I've kind of been there a year now and really loving it. So Specno is still learning how to, explain how to sell it. But essentially it's an agency that helps business owners with anything they need on the tech side. So we help first-time founders figure out their business plan. They come out to us with an idea, and we build out that idea. We build out monetization. We, put numbers to how long will it take you to design this app, and then develop it so they can take that to investors. We build pitch decks for investors. We help them pitch, all the way up to scale ups where we're, going into new regions, building big new features, and then also corporate innovation. So being little innovation think tanks. So, and that's what I do. So I'm a product owner there. I run a few teams, and I'm building all sorts of little apps. So I've gone from hyper focusing on one app to now being able to help lots of different founders build their visions, right? And I found that really fulfilling. And yes, Specno really feels like a bit of a unicorn in the kind of culture. So that's where I sit now, that kind of journey. And I have no plans of leaving, to be quite honest. They have a really great company culture, which I could rant about.
That's a good place to be, man. That's a good place to be.
So
I've been thinking as you were talking from the beginning of your journey up until now, and maybe it's also, I have this question to you, and it's also because I have the same question to myself that I'm still trying to figure out. And as you were going through your journey, you started as a gamer, but from the get-go, you knew you didn't want to be a professional gamer. You knew this was just an avenue to get into the strategy and business side of gaming. And then you were really interested in the business side of things. And then you got into product, and you realized that existed, and you really enjoyed understanding user experiences when it comes to technical or tech products. And that's where you kind of are now. If you had to reflect, what do you think is the golden thread that either piques your interest in continuously pivoting, because you kind of changed and pivoted what you were interested in, not what you're interested in, industries and profession, what you are practicing as a career, but there must be some underlying either a value that you enjoy or live up to that all these things have, like a golden thread. I don't know if it's a value or a desire or a purpose even, or a mission that you can see. Do you feel like you know what that is yet, or are you still kind of on the quest to figure that out?
That's a really interesting question. It's actually something I've thought about a lot. So as I've kind of gotten older, I'm 26 now. So I've been working 4 or 5 years. I didn't know what it looked like at Skirmish, because that was my first job. I thought I loved gaming and things. But about, I don't know, half a year ago, I did a personality quiz, the 4 types, and I can't remember the letters. But it was the teacher archetype, so the teacher. And that kind of just hit a nail on the head. It kind of was an aha moment. And I realized at that point what I actually really enjoyed, and the fulfilling part of what I do, is helping others. And this is, it's like we get these taglines at Specno.
Yeah.
It's like, help others build cool shit. All these people had like really fancy words that they use, but that's what I want to do. I want to help other people build cool shit. And that idea of, and I do that from products, because you're helping founders, you're helping developers have planned out projects so they can work better. You're telling UI designers, encouraging UI designers and letting them build the best screens that they possibly can. You're helping the founders of Specno by creating good projects. And that's kind of what I've learned about myself, is that teacher side of it, and helping share knowledge and empower other individuals is actually really what I live for. Because it was a big worry. I felt like a sellout for a long time leaving gaming, and I'd still like to get back into gaming when I'm 20 years of experience in. I haven't ruled it out, but yeah, that's kind of where I feel I get value from. And that's where I get my most satisfaction from, is when someone, can really thank you for empowering them.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I hear you.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So the personality test, actually, that's
helps,
the short. Yeah.
A little bit of reflection, a mirror. You said you feel like a sellout, or you've had these moments where you feel a bit like a sellout because of the pro gaming and how it ended. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Why you say that?
Yeah, well, it's very superficial, right? It's like I was in gaming.
No, not at all.
But like the plan for 5 years was to get into the gaming industry. I still love games. I've attempted to build many different types of games on many different softwares, or failed projects. So stepping away from gaming was a big worry for me, into apps and pure app dev. And I felt like I was losing a lot of my knowledge of my value add, being the gaming
scary.
Product manager. Now I was just a product manager. Everything I had learned from gaming, and this didn't end up being true, obviously, but that's what you tell yourself, would just be lost, gone, in a second. No one would respect it. I would just be some schmuck in product. And that was the fear. And I also, didn't understand where I was like this teacher thing. I hadn't actually made that realization still. So I didn't realize that I was enjoying it, the sharing side of it, and the empowering, and how good it felt.
Yeah. What value you add.
Yeah. So I have, I'm very good at telling myself to shut up, because I have a brain that very much runs through anxiety and problems. And, you send a message, how did I think? People thought I was an idiot in that meeting. Something a lot of us deal with, right? It's like the imposter syndrome. And a lot of what my mental effort goes towards is ignoring my inner monologue and relying on my support network to kind of validate. So, and I'll ask my girlfriend, I'll be like, I'll show her the message. It's like, was this weird? Did this come off wrong? She's like, no. It's like, okay, it was fine. And I'm going to ignore any thought that comes in. I'm going to fully trust this person. And there's risk. You have to have a good support network, right? Who want to see you succeed. But I feel like a lot of us do have that. And, it's not one person it's different people for different things. But I've, throughout my career, relied on those sense checks and then ignoring my inner brain to a large part. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're super right. And like, you could almost think about it as there's sort of like phases of mindset when you're going through a shift. And I think when you immediately leave something, there is that feeling of like needing to let go of it to be able to start the new thing. And it's sort of like you have to open your hand to receive something new, which means you let go of what you currently have.
So, if I could add a little anecdotal story. So when I got the offer to join Specno, and I was a complete mess. And I'd spoken to the two founders, and they, counter offered, and it was a great counter offer, and they wanted to keep me. And I just called everyone I knew who was working, literally everyone, like over 20 calls of just trying to talk to people to figure out, what decision was I making? Was it the right one? And then I kind of heard all of them, and they were saying, take the jump. If you've started it, there's obviously something there. And that was kind of the consensus that it kind of went towards. And then I went running, and I just ran as hard as I could for like an hour. And I was like I wrecked my body. And then I just sat on the side of the walk and just made the decision. I was like, right, this is what everyone tells me. And I really wanted to stay in a lot of ways because I had helped build the startup, and I felt very attached to it and very close to it.
Yeah.
I was the product guy who had designed a lot of it. So it was a really hard decision. And yeah, that's how I made it. And I made it. And I was like, cool, I'm staying. I'm jumping ship.
Sticking with the decision. Yeah.
So that's how I did it. Yeah. And because I couldn't trust my brain, that's how I saw it. Sorry to keep reiterating that point, but yeah.
No, I think you're totally right, and your story almost illustrates what I was saying. Is like you kind of needed to almost tally what you had, because as you're saying, you kind of needed to let all that go. But I think the thing that's interesting, and that I even find myself needing to remind myself, is like the version of yourself that you're going to become when you take on this new thing. Even though you can't see it yet, it's essentially it's still a part of you that's just as valuable as the gamer that knows all of these stuff. You're just still growing into that, and it's one of the things, like, more and more as I've kind of been in the professional space and gotten to see how different jobs or different roles essentially are you just using the same skills in a different format and a different configuration. And I don't know whether you got the same sense, and maybe even specifically thinking about how you contribute from like actually playing versus how you think about collaborating with people in a team, like where you are now. Do you find that there's a lot that sort of transfers between those dynamics?
Yeah, it's almost going right back to what I said about the live event, and the students not understanding exactly that. And putting it all on the role. I've got this role and that's what I do, and every company has the same types of roles. And you realize it's the people, and the role actually doesn't really matter. That it matters for like your next job, when you have to put it on your CV. But for the current job, it's completely elastic, and to actually just be someone who gets things done and who does what they're good at, and transferring those skills, you can do anything. I really am believer of like you can, in the current kind of corporate and capitalism environment, it encourages people to fake it and to reach as high as they can. And then you kind of fall a few steps lower and then you get better. And as long as you don't give up, success kind of gets guaranteed to a point. If you manage your it can all come tumbling down, of course. But if you're not the one right at the top, you're not the one taking all the risk, you're not the founder, you're just an employee. If you're that employee who keeps jumping up and jumping to the next thing and fearlessly taking on whatever comes, like, what are the consequences? They're not going to fire you for messing something up. The next job is going to appreciate that. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it, is it's completely lateral, and the world gets more lateral every day that goes by. I think AI is the great equalizer, of being able to do this, where a lot of those hard skills, it used to be a hard skill in product or in information systems to create these diagrams, system diagrams. That is no longer a hard skill. That was eliminated in a day, where you can go now to, what's it called? Chat diagram or something. Explain to it how the system works, and it's going to spit out a class diagram, of your business. So that's hard skill was just evaporated in a second. And anyone now, if they understand the system and what it looks like, and, I've got trips, and in my trips are different stops with pictures and videos, and they can just talk that, and that's going to become more and more real every day. It's going to get better and better. So, yeah, I think all we have at the end of the day is our ambition and our, lateral thinking of connecting different pieces. The hard skills are quickly changing, and who knows what that'll look like.
Yeah, sure. That's so true.
Yeah, so just a thing I wanted to add on to that, because I think for some people the immediate reaction is sort of like, oh, is my job safe? Am I good? Like, if these things are coming in that are going to be able to do things that used to take us a really long time. But I think one of the things that I've always somewhat appreciated is, more often than not, the tasks that get removed are pretty dreary or like repetitive or in some sense boring. And I think there maybe is there's a case to be made that there are some activities that, let's say, will get made irrelevant. But I think what that does is it frees you up to spend your time doing other things. Like, for example, like the system map maybe is something that goes away, but maybe now, because you're not spending all your time on the system map, you can focus on system optimization, which might be, an element. And how I almost think about it is technology allows us to abstract one step further. Because, for a long time, the horse rider was the person who was the best at transport, and then it was a driver, and it's sort of like the medium changes and the skill sets required to operate it change. But at its essence, there's a system that needs a map.
Yeah, AI won't replace workers; it'll replace tasks. And this is what what's his name, Sam Altman from OpenAI says all the time. It's nothing. You won't be able to replace the worker. The job is too dynamic. Things change too quickly. What it does is it changes how the worker works. And it's up to everyone how much they want to embrace that and change. But it's also, we're not going to wake up tomorrow and everything will be different. It's on the macro, that these economies change. It took, granted, the horse to drive, that was quite quick. And that caused a lot of problems. But, we've been living with AI now for 2 years. And, it's we have all these improvements. Every day things improve. At the same time, nothing has changed. The people who are working exactly the same they were 2 years ago are still working. And that'll still continue for years and years, and big companies will take years to change. Maybe, and, on the macro scale, things are flipping. But how you feel it as an individual, and at the end of the day, what's amazing with AI that I like so much is it's easy. It's not like there's this new thing that's impossible to learn. It's very human AI in how you talk to it and how you feed it. And with a little bit of learning, as it becomes more mainstream, there's education programs, et cetera, just like people learn to drive, right? What happened to people who were driving? What happened to people who were driving on horses who suddenly had to learn to drive? They didn't suddenly lose their transport forever. They just learned to drive.
Yeah, they picked up a new skill.
Yeah, and I'm thankful in AI in the fact that it's easy to onboard, and the empowerment it gives individuals who were tech illiterate or semi-tech illiterate for a long time and maybe are still and missed that jump to Excel. You missed the jump to Excel. You are now data empowered through AI because you can do it. So it's kind of caught up with the older generations, and I think the impact is actually the fringes feel the advantages way more than the power users.
In the center,
Yeah. And I really like that. I really like technology that equalizes. I think there's a lot of value, to society. But yeah, fun times to live in. So something, that's interesting. If I can just talk on the AI for a second. I don't know how much time we have left, but something I think a lot about is agencies, much like Specno, and the app ecosystem. So this idea of helping a founder build and launch a product. What does that look like in 5 to 10 years? Are you still building dedicated apps for your business? And how will the ecosystem, websites, is a website still relevant if you're interacting and gaining all your knowledge through a chatbot? Why visit a website?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think you're really right. And it's way easier to get information from ChatGPT than from Google.
Yeah.
If there's a specific thing that you want to, because Google, you're going through different websites. You need to figure out which is the right website and which one isn't just an ad. It's the other case, you ask a question, you get your answer.
Yeah. Google's search IP is getting less valuable. The main place American Zoomers find information is TikTok. Did you know that?
Yeah.
They're searching TikTok videos.
It's a search engine.
You don't go to a website on a cooking guide where it's 1 million SEO.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
You go onto TikTok and you watch a 5-minute video of them cooking the thing. So how we search for information is changing. And a big focus for me is ensuring that Specno is at the front of AI. And we're building the AI tools because we also risk this whole kind of helping people. AI helps people, really. As a founder, you can launch, let's say in 10 years, you can launch a one-time proof of concept, start getting users, charge them. Money is probably built in, spending is built in, revenue is built in, like we see X wanting to take it as well, where everyone has these wallets. So what your knowledge is becoming less valuable. And a lot of consultancies like, McKinsey as well, what they're sharing is their knowledge on how to build products, on how to launch. And we need to be very aware as the helpers that you need to help them with the AI. It has to be through the vision of AI. Else you risk an impact to your business. So something we need to do is we need to learn how to build AI tools. So starting internal initiatives to build our own AI chatbots so that when people come to us, we're the ones building the tools helping the people, not the ones actually directly helping the people anymore. So I think it affects kind of all industries. Everyone has to adapt, or ultimately you lose market share. Yeah,
definitely. So I think we are.
If you talk to me long enough, at an hour now, to start talking about AI, it's terrible.
That's one that you can go very, very, very deep into because it's really on the cutting edge now. But I think we're just about at an hour, and I think one of the things that I'd like to just hear a little bit as we sort of close down, because I think one of the things that was really interesting about your story, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to let you go into it, is because I think the gaming dream is one that a lot of people hold, and I think a few people get to chase it down, but for the majority of them, they kind of find themselves finding alternate paths, and kind of those eventually turn into a different trajectory. And so maybe to close off, one of the things that I think would be interesting is, as you're speaking about your time in gaming, you're saying you wanted to look at what a pro gamer might need in their specific context and what the industry might look like for them. And then you've kind of stepped now into this sort of business space where you're thinking a little bit more generally, not just about the gaming audience, but you're thinking about general products and their users. If you had to sort of describe one thing to the version of yourself that was kind of getting in at the beginning of its gaming journey, based on what you've learned now from a business perspective and as a professional gamer, what would you actually want to say to yourself when you're at the beginning of starting your gaming path?
Buy Bitcoin. No, I'm joking.
No, I mean, that's valid.
Advice. It would have been great advice.
It would be really, I know it's hard, but try build a game. Try build your own project. Something that's been my biggest struggle has been a million ideas. I'm definitely an ideas guy. And actually, I get, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, flat. Next project. Step 1, step 2, flat. And that's the advice I would tell myself is I know it's hard. I know it's impossible. But try, that's what everyone's looking for. Everyone is looking for someone who can build their own thing and make it a success. And if you can do that and learn and be at the top of your game, and own something in this capitalistic world that we live in, if you can own a piece of asset in business, there's so many lessons that come from that. So that's what I would say is really try, get the side project, commit to one and actually build it. And I think, my life would be very different. I think I would be in the gaming industry right now if I had built a game. I think that would have been the validation that I needed to go to a game studio and get picked up by a game studio. But I personally was never able to get out a product myself. And I'm building little things now, which is cool and stuff, and low code is great. And it's getting easier as well. Maybe that's what I would have said if I go back. It's like, look at the new technologies. Don't try, suckle your way through Unity.
Yeah.
Like try to find low code platforms and do it that way because they're going to get a lot better. I promise. So that's, I don't know if you can kind of relate or that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense. And I think for me, my sort of, I guess the thing I would have said to myself back then was lean into your strengths. I think there were specific strengths that I had that I think expressed themselves in gaming, but there was more relating to working in a team because I wasn't good at every game. I was specifically good at team games. And in a sense, it also translated for me to, like, in the professional space, I still thrive most when working in a team. And so I think, listening to what you're saying and specifically thinking about that element of owning things, I think that's something I learned in a different context, but also something that I'm realizing now is more and more valuable, just because when you own something, there's a level of expression that you have, and sort of like you kind of have this thing that's tangible in the real world. And whether or not it dies 5 years down the line or it lives on forever, the fact that you built a thing and it was in the world, there's a certain level of credibility and a certain level of just being able to put something out into the world that people can actually engage with. And I think there's something definitely to be said for that.
And I think it's the one thing that everyone across the business world appreciates, because that thing cost you suffering, and the developers know it. They know that you paid to get this thing out, and the really top investors also know, the struggle. So that's why I think
you need to be able to suffer.
Yeah, exactly. And they know you can. And I think that builds your character for other people. It builds a really great character.
100%.
Great, and you're on the way, having your own thing. So, commend to you,
and suffering as we go.
Yeah, exactly. But, who knows where the journey takes you, right? Who knows where we all sit. And as long as you keep taking risks, again, take risks. What's the risk? Like, you have to, darkest before the dawn, all of that sort of
Yeah. I think we're coming full circle to what you said in the very beginning about what was the consequences, right, and the opportunity. Yeah. And that's kind of the same to what we're chatting about now, which is following through with building something of your own, and doing it maybe with the intention and the goal of the value it will give you in terms of the lessons, how it will develop your character, rather than stressing or aiming for the fact that it has to succeed, because that's a lot of time that keeps people from actually doing that and following through with their ideas or ventures, is because of that fear that it won't succeed, and it probably won't. But it's not about that, and really just kind of seeing the value from the get-go will be the journey and the character it will give you.
So something, maybe a final piece, at Specno, the gold nuggets that we look for are second-time founders, third-time founders who have been through it, who understand the problems, and now they've got their second idea. And they've done things the right way, and they started the right way, and they come to us with a plan. Those are people who are really easy to back. And I actually don't know the stat, but I'd wonder how many founders, what's the ratio of, fail, life goes to shit, you need to get a grocery job, versus you get found by, a parallel company, or you go on to do your second thing and find success. I wonder what those ratios look like. I'd be willing to bet of founder community, most find success in their lives despite the failures, because they're the type of individuals who will go on.
But even just from a grit perspective, like, a person who knows what they're getting into versus a person who thinks they know what they're getting into are two different people.
So I'm currently a person who thinks they know what they're getting into, because I've started little small things, right? But nothing properly. But I'm waiting. I'm still young. 26, by 30. I said by 30, maybe I'll be crazy enough to actually go and try something.
Definitely. But Josh, thank you so much for this. It was great to sort of do a little bit of a walk down memory lane. I think I also kind of was going along with you, because, there's a lot of in your journey that reflected in mine. And I really appreciate you being able to sort of like speak to each of the different elements and how you felt about them at the different stages that you described. So thank you very much for being willing to share. I'm sure the audience enjoyed it. But I guess until next time, maybe one last thing. I don't know whether you're communicating on any platform or you're in the socials, but if people are interested in hearing a little bit about the work that you do, or what you're busy with, where can they follow or find you?
I need a product built. I'll patent Specno services. No, look, I've got a really shitty Twitter that hopefully you don't find, which is crap. Then it's really, I like LinkedIn. I like connecting with people and I like talking with people and I'm very open. So, I'm talking with a whole bunch of the red and yellow designers, who message.
Amazing.
I call with them. I help them with the one business case for their project. But I really like connecting with people. So LinkedIn is probably the best spot. I'm just Joshua Weiss, like the beer, spot like the beer. And then Specno, I think, is a really cool company. We're moving very quick and we build very good ways. And nothing beyond that. And I think we really care. And I get a lot of value from that. So if you want to go look at Specno, sure, feel free to. But otherwise, I'm happy to chat and even play games with, whatever.
Nice.
But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is my first time being on a podcast, I believe. So thank you for giving me...
Another first in the bag.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a definite like check on my like ego box, right? It's like, okay, there's some trajectory here from 0 to 1. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And asking the questions that you do, I think it's a really cool medium you guys have built. So, and I've been a follower since November last year, since Alfie we met. I'm a follower. I watch the podcasts. I engage. I really enjoy the content you two put out.
So you actually manifested this moment right here. Nice.
No,
thanks so much, Josh.
Anyway.
And thanks so much, listeners. Until next time, we are out.